Hey all, welcome back to Frankenstein. Okay, today we're in volume 1, letters 1 through 4. So this is an epistolary novel, which you should look up or do a little bit of homework on. But we're going to look at these letters kind of quickly to situate where we are in terms of setting, and then we're going to concentrate on Robert Walton. This is a actual photograph of Robert Walton. No, not really. That's the actor Aidan Quinn from one of the many filmed versions of Frankenstein. I think this one is available free online if you want to take a look at it too. So what we have is 4 letters that Robert Walton is writing to his sister that raise the question, because each letter is written from a different place: where in the world is Robert Walton? Letter 1. He writes to his sister. Let's use this map again, even though you can't really see those terms, cities very well. He writes from St. Petersburg, Russia, to his sister back here in beautiful London, England. Here is a painting of St. Petersburg, which would have been the capital of the Empire of Russia, the Russian Empire. And the dating for this, I know the novel does that kind of odd thing to us where it has December 11th, 17 with a dash. It doesn't give you the years. The scholars would tell you that this novel is written at the last part of the 1700s. And so he's actually in St. Petersburg relatively shortly after the death of one of Russia's great rulers, Catherine the Great. And what he's there for, you can read about his reasoning for being there, but he's trying to find the Northeast Passage, which is this, here's England right there, right? And he's up here in Russia, and here's the North Pole, the US and Canada is over there, there's Greenland. Okay, anyhow, from England to China, they were trying to find this passage, hopefully through the Arctic Sea, to get to China quicker or whatnot. And that was from them north and east. So that's why it's called the Northeast Passage. And that's what he's looking for. Letter 2, he moves. He goes from, we have him in a different place. He goes from St. Petersburg to Archangel. So Archangel is a very northern port. And it's named after St. Michael the Archangel. I think we should probably read some significance into that, since the novel has situated itself in some ways as having to do with Paradise Lost, right? That was the epigraph we talked about in the last lesson. So Michael the Archangel, of course, is a good angel. In Paradise Lost, you have the character of Satan, who is a fallen angel. So possibly some significance to that. Here's a picture of modern day Archangel. We move to letter 3, which is the shortest. He writes it very quickly and sends it on another vessel back to his sister. And then we get to letter 4. And in letter 4, we start to get into some of the meat, I guess you could say, of the chapters of this particular section. I want you to consider the setting really quickly. We'll talk about setting again. These are photos I'm going to show you from the Endurance with Sir Ernest Shackleton. I keep wanting to say Shackleford, but it's Shackleton for some reason. Read his story; it's really cool. These are actually in the South Pole, and our novel, of course, is based in the North Pole. But it gets across this, frankly, the scary nature of this adventure that Robert Walton is on. Readers then would have read this as a real adventure story, that he's going in search of something that everybody wants to find. He could become fabulously wealthy, all that kind of stuff that goes with it. There's great risk involved. For instance, here you see what happens to this ship when it gets stuck in the ice, and here it is eventually sinking. So make sure you look up that story. It's a really good story, interesting to look at. It's a true story. And here's also a picture of Sir Ernest Shackleton dressed in 19th century gear. So these pictures you're looking at take place well over 100 years after the Frankenstein novel, but they should give you a picture of the fearsomeness of traveling in the Arctic. After the 4 letters, then our buddy Robert Walton shifts into making a journal. So interestingly enough, the letter format basically ends here at the beginning, and we get into a journal. And you're going to get into one really long journal. At the end, we'll return to him dating some things, but even then, it's going to be a journal or a diary entry. So there on the ice, he's gotten Victor on board. Victor has reluctantly, stupidly, gotten on board. He wanted to know where they were headed. It's like, hey, dummy, get on the boat. You're going to freeze to death. So now he's going to spend the rest of the novel being a narrator or being a compiler, being a stenographer. I can't think of the word I want to use here. Anyhow, he's going to take notes, double check. Victor at times will look and make sure that he's writing the thing down. So that's what Robert Walton's role is. He writes down the story that really comes to us via Victor Frankenstein. There's going to be a chunk where the monster talks, but the monster's story is related to us through Victor Frankenstein. So Victor Frankenstein really is the person through whom we know the entire story. So you're getting introduced here in these opening letters and in the next few chapters to the cast of characters. So we have Victor Frankenstein. This is a still from the famous 1931 movie that a lot of people base their understanding of the novel on. They think the novel is this when really they're talking about this movie. And still from the same movie, this is the monster or the creature. And I do want you to notice as you go through this, especially in these letters, just look for this. If I'm wrong, tell me. But it sure seems to me that old Victor Frankenstein, any chance he gets, he tries to make us know that this is not a human being, this is not a person, this is not someone we should sympathize with. There's a time or two, though, he'll sympathize with the monster, that's true. But he wants us to know that this is an otherworldly being, in a sense. It is a monster. So just always think about that. When you're getting the description of the monster, you're getting Victor's take on it. And then, of course, our other main character here is Robert Walton. But is he actually a main character in the story? He's the narrator. But is he a main character? How much of the story rests on his actions and what he does? We'll have to see. Robert Walton, just a few facts, a few questions, and then we'll call it a day. So Robert Walton, he's got a sister, Mrs. Margaret Seville, and she is in England. She's married and has children, which you'll read about when you get to the last part of the novel. Page 153 is based on the Norton edition of this. There's no mention of his mother. His father has passed away. And it's just interesting, I think, even here in these letters, you get themes that are going to be developed in the novel. And this is the absent father or the absent parent. Perhaps that's a better way to think about it since his mother is dead as well. But there's no mention of her. He's 28, according to page 10, so a young man. Since childhood, he's had a heart for adventure, and that brings up themes of ambition and the desire for glory. His education, he looks to be, he doesn't have the same education, at least that Victor will get, right? So look at education as a theme. And I want to go back to that for a second. Education is a theme, and that would have been something very dear to the heart of Mary Shelley's parents and Mary and Percy Shelley, too. I believe that'd be fair to say. His father's dying command was that Robert doesn't go to sea. And you can see his son is totally disobeying him, so there might be parent-child relationships to consider. Robert is lonely. He absolutely is. These letters, I find him such an empathetic, sympathetic character. He's lonely. He wants a friend, which really deals with these themes that we'll read about in the novel, about isolation and relationships. So he wants a friend. Is he going to find one in Victor? You'll have to read and see. What role, though, last thing I want to talk about is what role does he actually play in the novel? You know, you think you list these three, Robert, Victor, and the monster, but they're not of equal weight by any stretch of the imagination. He's our narrator, and he's our narrator. But what role does he play as a character, right? I mean, is he really a main character? I was thinking about this the other day, and I have my own thoughts, but I'd rather hear about yours. He's absolutely not the protagonist. He's absolutely not the antagonist. So what role does he play in the novel? When you're thinking about characters, right, you sometimes look to see, do they change or do they stay the same? So look at Robert Walton. This really is his section of the novel. And then the end, we'll get a bit more of Robert Walton. But we're going to say goodbye to him for large sections of this novel. But so keep this in mind. Does he change over the course of the novel? As you read through the novel, you could look for comparisons and points of contrast between Robert and Victor. How are they similar or different in ambitions and their education? Education is the theme in the novel. Their relationships with others. Sorry, that's a typo, but I'm just going to leave it. And as letter writers. That's me being kind of silly, but you'll see Victor writing letters, and Robert's a better letter writer. We talked a little bit about this, about considering doppelgangers in the novel, about how Victor and the monster kind of mirror each other. I don't think you can make, and that's probably overstating it a bit, but it's something to consider, right? I don't think you can make that same thing about Robert and Victor. I think there's enough differences between them. They're not mirror images. I don't don't know. Maybe they are. What do you think? I'd be curious to hear what you guys think about that. Here's Schmoop, which has provided these things about it. I'm not going to read these all. I thought they were interesting, and I'm not sure I totally agree. Be honest. Robert Walton? Well, he's not as bad as Victor. I don't really know that I think of Robert Walton as bad. Victor drives me a little nuts, but not Robert Walton. Weaknesses, is he self-educated? There's nothing wrong with being self-educated. I think they're trying to say he doesn't have a college education. He is lonely. Is he crazy? I don't know. If we're everyone who wanted to find the North Pole, were they all crazy just for wanting to find the North Pole? Something to think about. We'll think about madness when it comes to Victor and when it comes to the monster. So it's cool if you want to think about it in terms of Robert Walton. You might be able to compare and contrast Robert Walton and the monster. They're both foils to Victor. The novel is named after Victor. It's Frankenstein. So they're both points of comparison to him. That might be interesting. I guess you could also try comparing and contrasting Robert with his sister, but boy, that would be a hard task because there is nothing here about her. Very, very, very little. But someone did write a book, as you can see on the right hand of the screen, filling in some of the blanks, which is what fiction writers do, and it's kind of cool. Well, that's all I got to say, so I'm going to leave you all with Robert listening to Victor tell his tale. Have a good day, y'all. Bye.